The dolphin LSD experiment. NASA put a woman in a room that was flooded up to her hips and let a dolphin loose in there to live with her in order to attempt to teach the dolphin to speak English, and LSD was later used on the dolphin to see if it had some kind of reaction and if it affected its speech lessons. You forgot the best part, where apparently the dolphin was constantly horny, so the lady had to keep jerking it off. It's even better than that, because before it got to that, they used to bring in a female dolphin for conjugal visits, but the scientists decided that interacting with another dolphin would have a negatively impact on his ability to learn. The reason only the orange variety of carrots is widely available is because the Dutch like the color orange. They leverage their powerful trade networks to make it so. I love that everything else on this thread is about assassination and biochemical warfare, and then there's just the Dutch wanting everyone to think only orange carrots are available. Had to do with honoring our monarchy. Picture this: purple carrots. The US government forcibly sterilized minorities until the 1970s. 50% of Native American women were sterilized between 1970 and 1976. Some women were told they couldn't receive welfare unless they were sterilized first. Some were told they would no longer receive healthcare if they refused. Some women were told that the procedure was reversible when it was not. Some women went to the hospital for something like a tonsillectomy and were given hysterectomies while they were unconscious. It's amazing to me that this isn't widely known. This happened in Canada, on top of residential schools and the 60s scoop. More terrifying than that, it was recently revealed that doctors in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta are still doing it today. The CIA ran experiments with LSD at McGill University in Montreal. Hey, it was the Cold War. If you weren't experimenting with LSD, you weren't trying. To be fair, all wars fought in Montreal are Cold Wars. Ch. Project Azorian. Project Azorian was a US Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, project to recover the sunken Soviet submarine K-129 from the Pacific Ocean floor in 1974, using the purpose-built ship whose Glomar Explorer at a cost of about $800 million, or $4 billion today. Take a giant cargo ship, hack a secret hatch in the bottom of it big enough to fit a submarine, and rig up an enormous grappling hook. Then go submarine fishing. Oh, and U.S. military donates 2 more powerful than Hubble telescopes to NASA, out of the blue. Key fact: 1 and 2 are not only equipped with the same 7.9 foot mirrors as is the Hubble, they're also fitted with secondary mirrors that improve focusing. Yeah. The DOD got bored with having 2 more advanced than Hubble top secret telescopes on the shelf, so casually donated them to NASA. In 2012. For a long time, there were theories that the egg industry, just as a whole, wanted to take down the vegan mayo brand Just Mayo. They felt threatened by the brand, since it basically tastes exactly like the real thing, but without the egg that the industry relies on. It was regarded as a conspiracy theory, and there was no way the egg industry would all band together and try to take down a single vegan mayo brand. Until, in 2016, emails were leaked and showed that yeah, they were banded together and were trying to take down Just Mayo. Some of the emails showed that some of their representatives talking with a rep from Whole Foods about how they could easily pull the brand as a whole from shelves. As far as conspiracy theories go, it's pretty mild, but still wild, because it's fucking eggs. The US government tested drugs and chemical weapons on its own soldiers and various animals during the Cold War at the Edgewood Arsenal facility. It's also where we got bulletproof vests and some vaccines. If you want to ruin your day, look up Bad Trip to Edgewood. I did my 8 in Edgewood. I remember the gas drills we were required to do. Nothing like a Mop Gear run. They had an incinerator somewhere in our local vicinity where they would destroy chemicals. There wasn't a single day where I didn't think about dying in some horrible fashion. Luckily no mishaps, and my time at Edgewood was just a shitty 8 experience. Years ago, the big light bulb, as I like to call them, decided to purposefully turn down the lifespan of light bulbs to sell more, and the companies who didn't agree were alienated from trading with primary sources for light bulbs. To add to this, planned obsolescence. They do this stuff with a lot of different products, especially light bulbs and printers. There is a really good documentary about it called The Light Bulb Conspiracy. The Hawaiian royalty was toppled by a fruit company, Dole. Fruit companies did all sorts of crazy and terrible shit. There's a reason we have the term Banana Republic. It originally referred to puppet governments installed by mostly US-based fruit companies to exploit cheap labor and land in prime fruit growing regions. The monster study was a stuttering experiment performed on 22 orphan children in Davenport, Iowa in 1939. It was conducted by Wendell Johnson at the University of Iowa. Graduate student Mary Tudor conducted the experiment under Johnson's supervision. Half of the children received positive speech therapy, praising the fluency of their speech, and the other half negative speech therapy, belittling the children for speech imperfections. Many of the normal speaking, orphan children who received negative therapy in the experiment suffered negative psychological effects, and some retained speech problems for the rest of their lives. This is truly awful. The FBI was constantly stalking Ernest Hemingway and that led to his suicide. But why? Ernie liked to travel to Cuba. Cuba even made a stamp of Hemingway. Hemingway, being extremely popular and a world-class writer, could very quickly and effectively sway public opinion, if he wanted to, by publishing a well-written book or essay. The FBI didn't want any surprises. Project Sunshine, in which the US government, in the wake of dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ordered a major study to better understand the effects of radiation exposure/nuclear fallout on the human body, so an international network of agents was recruited to locate recently deceased children and steal body parts from them to use for testing. Kari but very true. I'm an X-ray student and we talk about this a lot in class. A lot of rules and regulations regarding medical radiation exposure are all based off data from exposed Japanese citizens. Edit. Fun fact: bed or banana equivalent dose is an informal radiation unit. Bananas give off approximately 0.1 microsieverts of radiation and can be used as comparison when studying radiation exposure. Not only does the US Gov have a heart attack gun, it also has other means of sci-fi spy weapons, such as mounted radar dishes that can cause mass hysteria for crowd control via high pressure frequency waves, among other crowd manipulation devices. Edit. Just a clarification, I did mean the microwave gun. I was both intoxicated while writing this and pulling what little bits from my memory I could. Many users below have figured out what I meant. Sorry for the confusion and word jumble. I'll try and do better next time. One of the more awful crowd control weapons they have is the active denial system, which shoots a microwave frequency RF beam at a crowd to disperse it. If it hits you, your skin feels like it's on fire, but it causes no lasting injury. The problem is, you immediately want to run away. This can cause people to die in stampedes. And imagine if they turned it on a group of people boxed in an alley. The US government did biological warfare testing on the public in San Francisco. Bioweapon testing in San Francisco. There was also the Green Run where they intentionally released radiation in Washington state in 1949. My dad's friend, born in 1946, from high school grew up in Richland, which is downwind of Hanford. He died of cancer in his late 50s, just like 3 of his siblings. Edit. Clinton apologized for related incidents in 1995. In 1999 Russia killed 300 of its own innocent citizens and injured 1,000 more through a series of terror bombings of apartment buildings. The goal was to motivate public support for a war in Chechnya and to bring Vladimir Putin to power. It worked. Some of the perpetrators were caught red-handed by local law enforcement. After they were caught and identified as federal agents, the FSB said it had been a training exercise. The evidence is considerable and damning. Divulging details about the plan is also the reason Litvinenko was poisoned. The FBI sent an anonymous letter to Martin Luther King Jr. telling him to kill himself. Operation Paperclip. Recruit Nazi scientists and insert them into key government tech operations after WWII. This is how the world transitioned from the German V2 rocket to NASA and the ICBM in the span of 30 years. After the war ended, we were snatching up crowd scientists like hotcakes. You don't believe me? Walk into NASA sometime and yell Heil Hitler. Whoop. They all jump straight up. Malariaja. It's entirely possible to receive your tax forms pre-filled by the US government. They already have all your information, and this is the way it's done in other Western nations. Unfortunately, the owners of TurboTax have paid off enough congressmen to keep it from happening. In fact, they are not content with just stopping it. They want to make sure it's impossible forever, and they are about to succeed. Happy tax day. Here in Sweden we have had the option of saying yup, these pre-filled numbers checks out, and I don't have any additional deductibles via SMS for more than 10 years. This means you get your returns at an earlier date, since no actual human needs to be involved. Project Northwoods JFK was proposed an idea from the CIA in which they would rain terror on the American people via random terrorist attacks, military ships being sunk, and plane hijackings in which they would blame on Cuba, and therefore get the public behind the idea to go to war with Cuba. Thankfully, JFK declined. It's so obvious, and yet so strange and unfamiliar, to consider some men have the power to take several thousand lives for their own gain, and pay none of the repercussions. I can't even drive fast on the freeway, or show up late to work. Fuck, the internal guilt trip over calling in sick is almost worse than going to work. In the 1990s the Canadian government were using a homosexual detector called the Fruit Machine to find gay men and fire them from their jobs. Edit, the electronic device was only used in the 1960s. The systematic gay purge, also referred to as the Fruit Machine, continued into the early 1990s. The Fruit Machine was not only the systemic targeting of queers in the civil service, but also an actual contraption. It looked like a dentist chair, with cameras and sensor attached along with a black box that displayed images at eye level for the victim. Participants would volunteer to have their stress levels checked, when the machine was really an attempt to tell if a person was queer. Images shown to the participant would include erotic photos of men and women with other meaningless visuals. If she/he showed any sign of supposed arousal during a photo of someone of the same sex, they were added to the watch list. The Canadian government pulled the funding on the Fruit Machine in the 1960s, but that didn't stop the RCMP from constructing more invasive tests on unsuspecting participants. They continued with their stress tests, which began to include plethysmographs, highly suspect devices that attach to genitals to gauge arousal. Even after Trudeau decriminalized queer sex, the Fruit Machine kept secret tabs on Canadians in the civil service up until the 1990s. The US government pardoned hundreds of Japanese war criminals who did things that would have made Joseph Mengele blush in exchange for their research on biological warfare that they conducted on live human subjects. The bit of that Wikipedia page that I read will haunt me for a while. The FBI murdered Fred Hampton. COINTELPRO is also something completely fucking messed up that they did, which had wide-ranging negative effects on communities of traditionally disenfranchised groups. One of many actions undertaken covertly and illegally at the expense of these people. The ancient Egyptians had a pregnancy test that actually worked. I'm listening. 1350 BCE, one of the earliest written records of a urine-based pregnancy test can be found in an ancient Egyptian document. A papyrus described a test in which a woman who might be pregnant could urinate on wheat and barley seeds over the course of several days. If the barley grows, it means a male child. If the wheat grows, it means a female child. If both do not grow, she will not bear at all. Testing of this theory in 1963 found that 70% of the time, the urine of pregnant women did promote growth, while the urine of non-pregnant women and men did not. Scholars have identified this as perhaps the first test to detect a unique substance in the urine of pregnant women, and have speculated that elevated levels of estrogens in pregnant women's urine may have been the key to its success. Both the US and Russia use dolphins and whales to spy on countries. Edit, the US also uses seals as in the animals for protection at some of their marine bases. And thank you for so many upvotes. Like, now, I know they tested shit a while back. Can I get some more info? Yeah. Norway found one just last weekend. Why is this so funny? I imagine the beluga ping back like comrades, I've been made. During Prohibition, the US government added poisons to industrial alcohols because they were being chemically modified for consumption. This resulted in many deaths that the government justified by saying the dead had been breaking the law. Alcohol not meant for consumption is still poisoned in the USA. In this case, when people suggested using a poison that wouldn't cause real damage, the guy in charge said it doesn't matter what poison they use because it's their fault for breaking the law. Thanks for watching, and remember to like the video, share, and subscribe to our channel.